So, welcome to this presentation, which is Workplace Health and Safety. So, in this third module, I'm basically going to talk about the risk assessment, how you can conduct it. And please don't worry about this module that I'm going to share with you. Count it as a bonus because it was only developed for supervisors and managers, but I'm going to use it. Yeah. So it was used last year in December when we were training the newly recruited supervisors and managers. So great. Count it as a privilege to have access to this presentation. So let's quickly begin. So what's my aim that I'm having in this module? I'm expecting you to understand the role in hazard identification and avoidance and the risk assessment process as a whole. I'm going to talk about the risk control, the interpretation and the maintenance of control measures, the meaning of hazard and risks. In addition, I will also try to tackle the responsibilities of workers, supervisors, and managers. So you count yourself as the Occupational Health and Safety Officer. I'm going to put you in the class of supervisors. Then we are also going to tackle common hazards in the workplace. Then I'll show you how you can create a checklist and risk assessment list in the workplace. So let's quickly start. So let me try to put my presentation into a very well-known perspective. I'm going to give you a practical example, which is every day people die as a result of occupational accidents. This you are going to agree with me that in the recent years, mines have killed a lot of people. Work-related diseases, more than 2.78 million deaths worldwide per year. So if we can break down this 2.78 million deaths worldwide per year, we are going to find that almost each and every 15 seconds, one worker dies from a work-related accident or a disease. Then we can say that in 15 seconds, then 160 workers, they come across a work-related accident. So all in all, we are saying that there are about 374 million non-fatal work-related injuries each year, resulting in more than 4 days of absence from work. So it's a big number. So the human cost is scarcity, and the economic burden of poor occupational health and safety practices is estimated at 3.94% of global gross domestic product, which is GDP, each and every year. So this is there to give you the picture of what's really going on globally, what happens in all work. So we're not talking about only mines, we're not talking about only engineering organizations. So even in offices, because it's occupation, even though the teachers there, it's occupation there. Yeah, so they are all in this numbers that we're talking about. So here, wanted you, if it's physical, I would ask you to identify the hazards here. So let me just quickly do it for you. Here you can see the ant here. There is a picture, and there is one who is trying to cut something here. So can you give a definition of what a hazard is? And can you give example of hazards you encounter almost each and every day? So let me give you some of the hazards that you encounter and that are very common. If you work in an industry like this one, you cut things, just using a sharp thing is an hazard there. Without proper clothing, it's an hazard. So we can list numerous of them, and we can have a good bunch, and we can start discussing them, and we can have the whole day discussing those hazards. So there are many. I've talked about physical hazards. Then there are some risks also. So even in this picture, I can ask you now for the sake of time, but it can be good if we can have a conversation here. We discuss it together. So as you can see there, we have 3 pictures. Let's try to discuss for 2 minutes. What risks can we identify here? What risks can we identify here? Let's put it in a, not just a presentation, but a discussion a bit, so that we can grasp what we are about to talk about. Yes, Mr. Kafwimbi. Your mic is on mute.
Okay. I'm saying I think there is no proper PPE. There is no protection.
There is no protection.
I can see one working barefoot there.
Okay. Yes, that's one of them. Yes, Mr. Ignatius. What have you identified there? What risk have you identified? Unmute your microphone.
Hello?
Yes, now we can get you.
Are you able to get me now?
Yes.
Okay, I was saying actually I had identified the first one, which was already spotted on by someone, but even in the other pictures where there's a lady doing the, is it a man who is it should be a sewing machine or a cutting machine, something like that. Also, on the other hand, yes, there is a glove which is used as a protective, but still you have a blade, which is also a hazardous thing.
Okay, good. So I was talking about this one, right?
Yes.
He has spotted a potential hazard here. Yes.
Yes, which is a blade, I think.
Yeah. What about this first one here? What can we see here?
In this first one, this is a sewing machine also, I think so.
Yes.
But I think a potential hazard is also a needle, is something that is which is sharp. That is obviously a part of the machine equipment.
Yes.
It cannot be seen, but I believe there should be a needle somewhere by the far end somewhere.
Yes. Yeah. So thank you very much, Mr. Ignatius and Mr. Kafwimbi, for those identifications. Great. So just to add on, Mr. Ignatius, what you have said in this one, yeah, there is a needle there, we can see it, and she's looking somewhere else. But let's put it in this context. Apart from this picture is very much different from these others, these two, to my right hand side, it's very different. Because here there is a lady and there is a man standing there. Then we can say that a lot of ladies, they experience or they have eyewitnessed sexual violence and harassment while at work. It happens almost in all organizations, in all sectors. There are some bosses who harass people there, the ladies, obviously the lady to harass a man there. So it happens. It is also a hazard in this case. Remember what Mr. Masuzi yesterday explained about these hazards? We need to make sure that the environment is friendly and free to each and everyone. Not to allow sexual harassment or sexual violence while at work. Then in this second one, Mr. Kafwimbi well identified this man who is working in the place where there are some sharp things there. Let's say is a welder there, then there are some cables down, there are some metals that he's stepping on, then he's barefooted. Yeah, it's a very much potential hazard. Is operating in an electric environment. Then there can be sharp things that he can step on and he can injure himself, of which he can't work for 2 or 3 days, even more than that, if things can happen to his foot. So, and in this one, Mr. Ignatius has identified this potential hazard. Yes, there is a glove there, but see the distance from the machine, where he's standing from. Yeah, you can't work well on that machine. It is a rotative one. It can rotate. Yeah, so, yeah, there are some potential hazards. So, great. We have now the picture of what we are talking about. Now, how can we manage these hazards that we have identified? So, let me start by defining what a hazard and a risk is. I'm saying, in all process of trying to calm these problems that we have identified, we need to do a risk assessment. And the first part in risk assessment is hazard identification, which is a very essential step. Because if we identify the problem, which is the hazard, then we can plan for it. We can calculate the cost that it is going to bring in, and we can finally find the solution to it. So there is a difference between the risks and hazards. So let me try to define what a risk is. So let me first give it in broad, which is risk assessment. I'm saying that risk assessment is a systematic process. There is systematic, which means there are certain steps, and these steps, they are always required, so they have to be followed. So it's a systematic process of identifying hazards and evaluating any associated risks within a workplace. Then we need to implement reasonable control measures so that we can remove or reduce it. So remember, a risk is a likelihood and the severity of a negative occurrence of, it can be an injury, ill health, damage, loss resulting from a hazard. So a risk is the likelihood of anything to happen that was caused by a hazard. Then a hazard is anything or something that has the potential to cause harm to your health. And this, they can cause what we call an accident. So if an hazard, it has caused that potential, the potential harm that it had, then the harm is seen now on your body. That's the one that we are calling as an accident. Because an accident is any unplanned event that results in loss. So basically we have these definitions here. Now let's try to move into what could possibly go wrong. What could possibly go wrong in one, cutting department. So we had the cutting department there, then even in the warehouse. I love to present this in physical, this module, because it needs interaction. You need to be asking a lot of questions there. So let me try by all means to run away from some of the questions so that we can save time. So in cutting departments, there are some things about the three that I identified that can probably go wrong. The first one is fatal injury while improper handling of cutting equipment, like in straight knife, round knife, or band knife, even electrical shock. So in this picture here, in the first one, the third one, so cutting might go wrong here because of the distance where he's standing from, and he's trying to pull the cutter there. So those sharp blades, those sharp knife that is there, it can cause a potential harm to him. So it is a hazard to him there. So even the distance is becoming the problem. That's one thing that might go wrong in cutting department. Then the second one is breathing problems, like suffocating in the department due to flying lint. In cutting departments, mostly when you are cutting, like this one here on top, even though we can't see his face, we all know that if we have a workshop, then we are cutting, many people are cutting, let's say 3 grinders, they are working at the same time. They are going to produce a carbon there, or they are cutting. So that carbon, it can cause us to suffocate because it is going to consume the high number of oxygen in the air there, and it is going to be many. So we can suffocate at the end of the day. Then improper handling of fabric or raw can lead to muscular injury. Yes, when that knife goes wrong, when the cutting goes wrong, you are going to have a muscular injury there. So that's possibly about the cutting department. Let's talk about the warehouse now, where we keep things, where we store things. Possible accidents in the fabric warehouse may include accidental fall while loading or unloading heavy fabric rolls, curtains, etc. So where we keep things there, if we are not packing them well, things can fall. and then falling of heavy machines there, they can fall heavy parts. So we need to make sure that the warehouse is well cleaned and we are packing things clearly. What about the maintenance store? What can go wrong? In that area, we can have accidental falling of tools or equipments, because when we are maintaining them, we are not using proper equipments there. For example, the mechanicals that go down to the car there, they start operating there. Yeah, so when they are unscrewing things there, we need to make sure that they at least at a good distance, then they are doing it. That's why it's important to have proper clothing when people they are working. Then injury from mishandling of tools and equipments, we need to tell our workers that they have to be cautious when they are handling tools. Then injury from manual handling or moving equipment, heavy equipment, we need to make sure that they are using, if things they are heavy, let's say you have a wholesale, then you order drinks from, let's say Zambia Brewer is there, yeah, then you have heaps of them there. Then you're telling people to push them at once. Why can't we use forklifters to move them? Why can't we use any other alternatives where we can pack them, then we push things, something with wheels there? Great. That is going to avoid the back pains. But if you are telling people to move heavy things from one place to another, it means that we are putting their health at risk. It is an hazard there. So we can love to talk about the generator area where we need to make sure that this area is more prone to fire due to the presence of fuel there. So we need to make sure that when we're handling anything with fuel, we need to be cautious, and we need to make sure that people they are putting on proper equipment, clothing that is heat resistant and it cannot cause dehydration. Remember, where the genset is, there is always noise, so we need to make sure that they are putting on ear muff so that they can protect their hearing. Great. So what about the chemical rooms, the boiler area where it is hot? We all know that where we are boiling things, the area is hot. When you have a chance to work maybe for first quantum, then you are there to work at the smelter point there. You need to make sure that they give you proper clothing, because there is too much heat there, so you might fall under heat stroke, due to heat stroke, and you can undergo dehydration. The burns they are there, the bursting of the boiler itself, due to fault or improper usage, it can happen. So you need to be properly equipped and well trained when you're working in these areas. What about in the room where we're keeping chemicals? Wherever we have chemicals, we all know the dangers of chemicals, so we need to have full equipment when we are operating in these areas. Yeah, so these are some of the things that we can talk about. Yeah, now to separate research studies, why occupational health and safety training is important. Why is it important? One is to make sure that people they are well equipped. They know the advantages, they know the outcomes or the consequences of not following the occupational health and safety regulations. So we need to tell them, we need to explain to them when we are training them. So my main focus in this is risk assessment. I'm saying risk assessment is simply a careful examination of what, listen here, examination of what in your workplace could cause harm to people, so that you can determine whether you have taken enough precautions or should do more to prevent that very harm from happening. That's about risk assessment. You need to make sure that people they are well protected. Then the risk of injury and damage should be controlled to reasonable and acceptable levels. That's the second factor of doing a risk assessment. One, you want to identify the problem there, which is the risk. After identifying it, you are going to find a reasonable and acceptable solution to it. And this solution should be reasonable again, and should be acceptable, or should be to the level that is well recognized or acceptable. So this is what the risk assessment aims to achieve, is to find the solution, and that solution should reduce the risk that we identified to the acceptable value. So risk assessment is not an end in itself, but is rather a means of managing those very risks that we identified. So many managers fail to appreciate this and invest far too much time in developing immaculate documents to keep on your shelf in the hopes of impressing a visiting inspector, auditor, as well as the director. This is actually not important, and to me it doesn't make sense. We don't even like taking a look at those reports. Mostly they are all fake. What's important is to you yourself take a risk assessment, visit. You go with your own risk assessment checklist. Try this. If you can have a privilege to walk around your area of employment where you're working from, the risk assessment checklist that I'm going to share with you, go with it. Then take the related areas that you have at the facility. Then give them the scores, how they are. Then one day, pay particular attention when the risk assessment officer will be conducting it, the risk assessment. Then ask, what are the results? Let me see, check their scores. They're going to be different from the ones that you are going to give them. So mostly those documents that are filed, well prepared, they are there just to impress the visitors. But in the actual sense, most of the workplaces here in Zambia, they are dangerous. So a risk assessment, so to say, anyway, is an essential technique to help reduce risks and prevent accidents. So risk assessment has its own basic principles, and one of them is that it should be suitable and sufficient once conducted. Again, it should not be too harsh, and it should be favoring to each and every side. Remember, when you are doing a risk assessment, you are there to protect or to speak for the employees there. You're not there to impress the people that hired you, no, but you want to identify the risk. Yes, if you favor them, at the end of the day, when an accident happens, they are going to pay more than they are paying you. And it is their name which is going to be damaged. So you are going to find that most of the external auditors, yes, they can do the reports, the assessments and the reporting just to impress the people that gave them that opportunity to assess that, that workplace. But in the actual sense, the company, they always pay a lot when an accident happens. So the risk assessment, secondly, should be not a one-off event, but it should be an ongoing cycle of activity. It should be done repeatedly, either after a month, or risk assessment can be done quarterly. But again, simple inspections, which is workplace inspection, is different from risk assessment. Workplace inspection should be ongoing. This should be done almost each and every day. Again, the risk assessment is that's not anything that you can just wake up, say, today I want to do a risk assessment. No, but you have to plan for it well. So most of the companies, they don't do risk assessments, but they would rather compile all the workplace assessments and put them into one document. Then they call it is the risk assessment report. Why? It is costly. Secondly, they don't have experts that can conduct risk assessment. So for the thing that it should be planned very well, when we say planning, in each and every assessment, when we say planning, there must be resources involved in it. There must be people to assess, to do the very assessment. There must be their salaries again. So it must be completely executed, ideally by a competent personnel. That's what I mentioned. So again, it must be a matter of detailed records, and it must record all significant findings. Should be there. So those are just basic principles of risk assessment. So principles of risk assessment, I can ask a question here. What is competence? What is a competent person? So we can answer that question here, because competency is the combination of training. First of all, you receive a training. You can't be competent when you just have a training, no. But you need also to have a set of skills that is going to build on that training that you received. Then to be competent, I guess you can have these things, you can know them, some of them, but you are not competent enough. So competence is also in levels. But if you have training, you have a good set of skills, then you have a good experience. We can say you are moderate, you are almost there, you are competent in, but not that much enough, but at least. But if we put knowledge now, you are able to make sound decisions on your own. We can simply say, now Mr. This is competent. So competency is the combination of training, skills, experience, and knowledge that a person has, and their ability to apply them to perform a task safely. So once you are making good and sounding decision in making a risk assessment, then we can say this risk assessment report was brought to us by a competent occupational health and safety officer or competent environmental health officer. Again, in the competence, there are some other factors that should be encompassed in, and that should support your skills. For instance, if you have bad attitude against some skills, then you can't have it. At the end of the day, you can't be that competent. So you should have good attitudes towards your work. You should have good perception of things, and physical ability can also affect someone's competence. So you need to make sure that you have a great and good attitude towards risk assessment. One thing that can make someone to look so incompetent, yet they are so very much competent, is the perception of a company. So the perception that you have about a certain company, because somebody told you that they don't keep their workers well, it can make you look like, no, even if I go and do a risk assessment on there, they say that the places is dirty, the walls are like this, yeah, the machines, they make a lot of sound. You start just filing the form without doing the actual assessment. That's the perception that you have, because that's what you were told, and that's what your mind is know about that organization that you are assessing. So you should have a positive perception. Just work, find your own findings and write them down. So the competent person is someone who can apply these abilities to make informed assessments in the context of occupational health and safety. So employees should take account of the competence of relevant employees when conducting risk assessments. This will help you decide what levels of information, instruction, training, as well as the supervision you need to provide. That's one thing that you need to know about competence. If you have these attitudes that we talked about, the competence, the experience, the skills, the knowledge, as well as the training, then you can provide a well-sounding decision. In the labor law organization, we discussed this with Mr. Mova. He discussed the employees' roles and responsibility, where you need to make sure that, and actually I continued from here, I talked about this, that you as the occupational health and safety officer, you are not the employee there to your fellow employees, you are the employer to them, because you are there to take care of their life. So managers should use risk assessment to help them manage hazards, risks, and workers' well-being. So combining these aspects in their approach can make them manage well people. So here I have a diagram for you that should be done, and that can be used when we are conducting a risk assessment. From the bottom here, this is where we're going to start from, because there are some of the qualities here and some of the recommendations that we have to do. There is a risk profiling here. This is the first step. Once we identify the risk, we need to file it in. We write it down. Oh, I have identified this risk, which is the cracked, or let's say I've identified naked cables there, electric cables. You write it down. Why are you writing it down? Because that's what the Constitution tells you to do. That's what the Factory Act, that's what the Public Health Act, and that's what the Occupational Health and Safety Act tells you to do. You need to write it down. Once you write it down, it means that you are trying to be compliant with the legal framework. Trying to be compliance. So that compliance is coming here now, legal compliance. So risk assessment, if you are able to assess the workplace, it means that you are trying by all means to be compliant. If you are compliant to these laws because you know them and you have taken the first step in conducting a risk assessment, it means that you are competent. So competence is coming in. You are competent. So to prove that yes, you are competent enough to do a risk assessment, you need to involve the workers. Worker involvement is coming in. So once you involve them, why are we involving them? We are going to explain to them. At this corner, I've notified a risk here. So as we are working on it, we should not be working in this area. We should do this and this and this and this to avoid it. Yeah, you are involving them. And this is what the law says. You should put on this type of clothes when you're working in this risk area. Yes, the risk is not that bad and it can be worked on, but let them know, involve them so that they can know. Once you involve them, it means that you have good leadership qualities, and once those leadership qualities they are initiated, then we are going to make sure that once they know, we are going to have this skill, which is leadership. Leadership really are the skills that we need to have. So once we explain to them very well, it means that we are able to do management of those risks. So we are under management now here. We have managed these people. We have tried to tell them about the risk so they know it. It can't just end about telling these employees how now they can protect themselves. One thing that we need to do is now to manage their health and safety. How can we do it? Is now by finding the solution to it. Once we find the solution, if it is involving some cash, let's now present it to the directors there. Let them manage the business risks there. Then it means that we are competent enough to conduct a risk assessment. I'm sure you are following. And with all this, we can say that, oh, Mr. Kafwimbi is a competent occupational health and safety officer. And as Green Living Innovations, let's hire him to be a consultant. Yeah. So that's about risk assessment. So what other things that we need to include in the risk assessment part that we can talk about it? Great. Remember, in my introduction, I said that risk assessment is not anything that you can just wake up today and say, I'm going to conduct it. You need to plan for it. So there are certain steps that you need to follow so that you can achieve the goal of risk assessment. Remember, the goal of risk assessment, we said that, is to identify the possible solution that is going to not only to eliminate but to reduce the severity of the risk to acceptable levels. So the first 4 steps that we can talk about, or let's say the first more major stages that we can talk about, the first one is planning. The second one is to do what you plan or to act upon it. Then you have to check it again. 4. So let me start with the planning first. What are you going to plan for? Is the risk assessment. Why am I planning for risk assessment? I want to protect the workers. I want to protect my workers. Great. But to protect them, I need to give them policies that they have to follow. So here we have policies under the planning phase. The policies should be given to them. That these are policies, remember, they are guidelines that they have to follow while they are at work. I'm going to tell them that you should be putting on clothing, you should not be working in this area. If you are working in the area where there are naked cables there before they are fixed, if there is water, don't allow them to enter that room to work in it. So those are the policies that I'm giving them. Every time you are entering this room, you need to put on a helmet. You should be putting on gumboots. Then you should have a respirator there. Yeah, those are the policies that I've given them. And I'll continue planning. Then I have to act now. But in acting, what should be the first thing? Not in acting, sorry, in doing, what I should do first is to notice where there is a hazard or a risk there. The risk is here, so I have to write it. Like I mentioned, risk profiling. I need to write it somewhere. Then I have to organize all the risks that I have conducted there after walking through from door 1 to door 2 until the whole workplace. I've gone through it. So I have to organize them. I organize the risks so that I can start presenting them and I can involve now my workers, as we said. Yeah, so there I have now to implement my plan. What's the plan? The plan is to protect my people there. So since I want to protect them, I need to put in some strategies. Those are the plans that I'm talking about, that I'm going to implement. The strategies that I already planned for. So as the Occupational Health and Safety Officer, first of all, you should have a broader picture. You should start having imaginations from now. You should have imagination that what might happen if there is this and this and this. What policies can I implement if it happened? Let's say right now it's raining, and you say here at the mine, at open pit mine, what if the rain is so heavy, it rained that day, then there's some slides that start happening to the land. These heaps that we are piling up, then they start sliding, coming back. What solutions can I have? So that's the plans that we are saying that now you need to implement. Since you have organized those risks, you have identified them. So that's now what you need to start implementing. Then you are doing it. After doing it, you need to revisit them. See how those plans that you initiated, how are they working? Under the check part, which is the third now, you need now to measure the performance of those plans that you initiated. You need to measure their performance, if they are effective or not. If they are not, swiftly find the other solution that you are going to implement in there so that they can be working while you are acting upon that risk. You should also investigate the accidents that are happening there, the incidents, and the near misses. Yeah, if the land slided, then how many survived? What happened? Where were you the time it happened? Ask them. Find the statistics there. You know, numbers don't lie. Put them those in the report. That nearly misses, they are about 5. Then no accidents happened. Yeah, so take the pictures of it, create evidence so that you can incorporate them with your report. So once you plan, you do, and you check it. Yeah, yes, you tried to act in the do part. You implemented the policies that they should follow, but now you need to act it completely. How can you do that? Yeah, you need now to review the performance of those plans that you implemented. Let them know. After reviewing them, if they are not effective, remove those ineffective ones. Bring in the effective ones. What they can do. If it's just to let people stop working for a meantime until water is gone or it is drained off, tell them, because that's what you see is good for them. You are competent, so even the boss is going to understand what you are telling them. So that's in the acting part. Then at the end of the day, you have to document all the lessons learned. Then we can simply say you had a very good approach in that risk that you conducted, that assessment. So after all, you need now to communicate all your findings and the lesson learned to the people involved, the third parties that are so interested in. Make sure that they know. So we can talk much about occupational health and safety, more special risk assessment. But let's now shift our attention to from the how you can plan from the circle. Let's now shift our attention to the different types of risk assessments that can be done. So some common types of risk assessments that can be done, though they differ. The first one is chemical risk assessment. If you are working in the company where they work with chemicals, let's say NCZ, National Chemicals of Zambia, there where they manufacture fertilizers, they work with chemicals there each and every day. In laboratories there, what can you conduct there? What type of risk assessment can you do there? You can do a chemical risk assessment there. Great. Like for Mr. Kalasa, who is working with the computer today here, he's taking a look at the computer, and throughout the day he's just on the computer. What type of risk assessment can we do in his office is the display screen equipment risk assessment, DSE, because I'm working with light, and this is a LED. This is LED gadget. There is LED in it, so yeah, the screen is on. It is affecting my eyes, so we need to assess it. The lightings, how is it? Yeah. Then manual handling risk assessment for those who do civil works. Yeah, they are working there. Mostly when the company is there employing, they call them as we need the general workers. They do a lot of work there, manual work. So we can do the risk assessment. Why are we assessing them? We want to know their physical well-being. How are they doing? Is that work conducive for them? Are they lifting heavy things? We need to protect them, so we need to do that. Then to the premises, just if we can move away from people there, even the premises, we need to conduct a risk assessment on them. But what type of risk assessment that we can give to the premises that we have, to our offices, is fire risk assessment. So fire risk assessment, we need to see if it's if the walls they are fireproofs. If they are not, what can we do? Do we have fire extinguishers? Under fire extinguishers, which type of extinguishers are we going to buy? Are we having in these premises? Is each and every office having a bucket of sand if they can't afford to buy fire extinguishers? And it is recommended to have both the bucket of sand and the fire extinguisher. In case where the fire extinguisher runs out, you are running out of fire extinguishers, you can use sand. And this bucket should be painted red, which is the same color of the fire extinguisher. And you can label it, or you can press it down the fire extinguisher. So these are some of the risk assessments that we can conduct. So workers and the responsibilities, these we have discussed. They have the right to remove themselves from a work in case where it is the environment is toxic. Yeah, so when you are conducting a risk assessment, these are bringing in because we want to know how the workers they feel about the work that they do. So ask the workers one or two. But once you do that risk assessment on them, you ask them questions, then they tell you the fact that the environment is very toxic. They let us lift heavy things. Yeah, the machineries, they are noisy. Please don't include their names in the report. This information should be kept confidential. Then they should be kept anonymous. Don't identify them, because you can go and they only read those reports. Yeah, those people that employed you, that called you to work for them to conduct a risk assessment, they are going to going through them. They peruse them, then they can identify the names, and which can cause them to fire people that gave us the truth about those people. So we need to make sure that their information, their identities is well kept. So you can go through them here. They are ILO Occupational Health and Safety Convention Standards. It was extracted from number 155, and these are the recommendations on number 164. So you can go through them at your own free time. So why risk assessment is important? This is the question that we can ask. Remember I said that risk assessment, it should be a very straightforward and structured method of ensuring the risks to the healthy, safety and well-being of the employees, and they are suitably eliminated, those risks reduced. If we can have power on them, we can't eliminate them. Say there's 3 stages here, they are in a red color: eliminated, reduced, or controlled. Just from my point of view, or that's the way they are well arranged, it means that they are concurrent. You can say we can eliminate this risk, but what if we can't eliminate it? There is one thing that we can do. If we can't eliminate it, we can reduce it to the acceptable level. Yeah, onto the acceptable level. But what if we can't again reduce it to the acceptable level there? Yeah, then we have power. We can just have total control over it. We can control it at least. So the main purposes of risk assessment is, 1, to identify health and safety hazards and evaluate the risk presented within the workplace. We need to make sure that we identify all the safety hazards that can cause harm to our people who are working there. Then the other thing is that risk assessment is there to evaluate the effectiveness and the suitability of the existing control measures that we initiated. So risk assessment is going to evaluate them. Let's say today it's 17th January, and yeah, I've conducted the risk assessment here. Then come 17th March, come and identify you want to conduct another risk assessment. You are going to find that there are certain measures that I can implement today. Some, they're not going to be very much effective when you come to do another set of risk assessments, which means you have come to evaluate the control measures that I initiated in this assessment. So if they are not effective, I'm going to remove them and I'm going to bring in new ones. So again, the other risk assessment that I'm going to conduct, it is going to evaluate the measures that I've initiated. So why are they evaluating the control measures that we had to plan for them? Maybe we spent a lot of time thinking about them, and there are some costs that were incurred to them. Well, the answer is very simple. They are not working according to the way they are supposed to work. The risk is still there. why should we keep putting same measures when the risk is maybe even getting a great great likelihood? No, the severity is getting odd. No. Then we have to remove it. Then risk assessment is also there to ensure that additional controls, including procedural ones, are implemented wherever the remaining risk is, and it is considered to be anything other than low. Then again, risk assessment helps us to prioritize further resources if needed to ensure the above. So we can talk so much about risk assessment, and I love it. So we can simply say the risk assessment is important because it can help us to protect the health of others. So as I mentioned earlier, it can be a costly lesson for a business if they fail to have necessary controls in place. Very expensive. So risk assessment, it is important again in the case where it is a link to other legal and employers. It's a link. Legal people, they are there. So one full-time fire officer and one full-time welfare officer are required by legislations if the factory has more than 500 workers. This was adapted in section number 55, subsection 12 and subsection 79. And it is recommended that companies make sure that these persons also cover other occupational safety and health issues, and to appoint such persons in smaller factories as well. So this is the part that Mr. Mova explained a lot about, where you are responsible to do this work. So the fire and welfare officers in this example alone cannot ensure a safe work environment. Thus, they need the support of top management, other managers, and supervisors. So how can you carry out a risk assessment? Basically, there are about 5 points that we can take, and these are the takeaway points about risk assessment, saying that first of all, we need to identify the problem. Once we identify, we need now to identify who might be harmed by those hazards, who is at the great danger. Yes, we can't just answer it in general, say employees. No. Identify the group. Which group is at risk? Which group? Identify it. Once you identify that group, then you should be now evaluating it. The policies that you implemented, as I mentioned. So implementing control and recording measures is the fourth step in carrying out risk assessment. Then you have to review them. So assessment and reassessing if necessary. You need to review them. So these are the basically 5 stages or steps that you need to talk about when you are talking about risk assessment. So as a competent occupational health and safety officer, remember, I need you to be able to identify risks wherever you are. So even if at home where you are sitting, identify the risks, the potential hazards there. Even the knife on the floor is a potential hazard. So I've identified one at your home. Check the kitchen there, you're going to find it. Great. So in that example that I'm giving, which is the one at home, you have the knife at the floor. In the second step, I'm saying identifying who might be harmed by those hazards. Who is at the great potential of getting harmed by this knife on the floor? If there is a baby there, an infant who is just growing there, he or she is the one who is at the great risk there. So if we remove it, then we put it on the shelf. It means that we have implemented a set of control measures that we want to do there. So we need to make sure that we write it down. Yeah, we did this. We moved the knife from the floor up to here. So we need to review it after, let's say, 2 years. If the knife is still here, is this kid now, he or she is standing, he can get it and he can cut himself. What should we do? If it's necessary, move it to another level of shelf where it is a bit higher until that one is old and he can stand on his own and he can know what can happen if he or she is using their knife. So that's basically how you can carry out a risk assessment. Yeah, so have I given you the example and I've explained this in a simple example using the knife? So there is a step-by-step process here, yeah, where you can have it. So let me just talk about the hierarchy of control measures. So risks, it's already 14 hours, so I'm going to cruise a bit. So risks should be reduced to the lower level, reasonably practicable level, by taking a preventive measures in order of priority. So I have the hierarchy here for you, and you're going to find that most of the things that we have talked about them, but this one is very much practical again. So let's discuss it. I have about 3 diagrams that I want to talk about here. We have the first one, which is here. As you can see, where the cursor is here, and the one it is having most effective and least effective. This is the key that I'm going to use to explain to you. So we have about 5 measures that we can bring in to eliminate the hazard. Let me not say to eliminate, to control the risk that was identified during the risk assessment. So this hierarchy is the guide that is going to help you to measure the severity or likelihood of each and every risk that you have identified so far. The first step, I said that if we have a good capacity, we can eliminate a potential hazard. Yes, we can eliminate it completely. For example, if it's the building where we are operating from, then the crack is very serious and it might fall. What we can do is basically to demolish that building, then we construct a new one. It means that we 100% eliminated that hazard that we identified. Simple. But know that for each and every control that you are about to put in, if you want it to eliminate the problem or the hazard that you identified completely, it is costly. That's why we have 3 colors here, about 4. In blue, we are saying that it is most effective. When it is most effective, it means that it is also expensive to work on it, to insert it. So physically, remove the hazard. That's what we are talking about. If we don't have enough cash to demolish that building there, yeah, we can't demolish it. Yeah, so let's try to substitute that problem there. How can we substitute it? What can we do? So substitution, just the basic language that we know. When we say substitution, is to remove something and we replace it with the other. Yeah, so in the case, let's say there is an excavator which is having vibration is out of control. Yes, the vibration is out of control. Yeah, so we have failed to eliminate it. We don't have enough cash to buy a new excavator. But what can we do? We can substitute this one. What can we do? We have to identify the part which is giving us problem, which is causing the vibration to go high. So once the vibration, that part is identified, buy the new one, press it. Or if you have the separate one, the one that you used previously, but the vibration is at least acceptable to the worker, bring it in. Then you have substituted that problem. So you have replaced the hazard with at least something which is not causing it to be that bad. Remember, vibration is also a hazard, but at this point, the vibration is not that much. It is acceptable. Remember we said that risk assessment is there to help us make decisions that is going to reduce the risks that we have or the hazard to the acceptable value. Great. Then if we can't substitute it, we don't have also enough funds to buy a new engine or just to buy a good second-hand engine that we can bring in an excavator. What can we do? We can bring in engineering controls. Under engineering controls, okay, let's move away from the excavator. Let's get the laptop that you are using. What engineering controls that can we bring in? Yeah, we can't dispose it off. Yeah, the light is too much. We can simply just reduce the light on it. Can try by all means to use to reduce the light. And if it heats too much, we will say I won't be using it for 2 hours. Those are the engineering controls. Away from that example, in the engineering controls, the other thing that we can do is in the case where you're working in the factory. Great. And there is noise there. It is noise. There are machines, they are making a lot of noise. Let's say in a workshop, engineering workshop. Great. This is where we can have engineering controls on it. Yeah, it is making noise. What can you do? You can try to demarcate, let's say, the whole building that you have. You can demarcate it. You can use the boards there. Imagine you are the boss there, you are the manager. Then you have a separate office in it there. Then machines, again, they are making a lot of noise. So you can divide the rooms in it using the board, these Fisher boards. You can just divide it. You are going to agree with me that the noise is going to be at least to acceptable value in your office because you implemented engineering controls. In other countries, they can also use these soundproof walls. They can build a soundproof walls just to divide the buildings there. Yeah, one of the engineering controls. So as you can see, the graph is going down, which means that it is not that effective, but at least it is making the severity of, it is easing the severity of an hazard identified or the risk. Yeah, then we can't even have time to look for those Fisher boards. We start installing them. Yeah, the capacity, mass of the financial mass of the organization is not allowing us to do that. Then we can go to the administrative controls, where we say, okay guys, the machines, they are making a lot of noise and we don't have EMFs, but what can we do? We'll be working 2 hours a day. You are protecting the healing of your workers, even for yourself. If the machine is so vibrating, say, okay, you'll be working for 90 minutes, then you rest for an hour, then again you continue, like that. If it's working with the computer in the office, it is recommended, the administrative control is there. It's to sit on a computer for 1 hour, make sure you stand, you take a walk for 10 minutes, then you come back. It's an administrative control. So in the case where you work with chemicals, so to say, you work with chemicals, then even the administrative controls, they are not working there. You try to implement them, they are not engineering controls, you can't substitute it. Yeah, then the last option that you can do is to provide those people with personal protective equipment, because they have to do the work. Although the risk is there, but they have to do the work. We need to work again. So just bring them proper clothing, let them work. But let me say this fact about most of the occupational health and safety officers. In the meetings, board meetings, once the risks they are identified, The first solution that almost each and every occupational health and safety officer they run to, that they suggest, is PPE. I don't know why, but that's the first one that they always run to, because they are scared to mention elimination or substitution to their employers, because it is expensive on the company. So they are trying to be brave enough. They are not trying to be brave to tell out the truth, but they want to keep that job. They don't want the company at the end of the day to start doubting them, saying, they ask a lot, we are spending too much on him. Let's see what the other or the previous occupational health and safety officer we had. He only used to propose simple things that we can manage. Yeah, so with that. So as you can see, it is even in red. PPE is in red color, which means it is least effective. Yes, people, we can give them proper clothing, and they are working within them. They are putting them correctly on them. You can even feel that, yeah, they are following the standards that I gave them, the training that I gave them about how to wear the helmets, yeah, the respirators, the gloves. But again, if they are just chemicals, those proper PPEs we gave them, yes, but they can soak that chemicals, and it can bleach their skin. It is the skin, we know it is good when it comes to absorption. It can absorb, then it can cause harm to their body. That's why it is so least effective. Same applies to administrative controls. If we say yes, people will be working in this area where we have chemicals again just for 2 hours, still we have given them yes PPEs, but this respirator again, at the end of the day, it can start taking in that air, that smell from the chemicals. Again, they can be affected. So the best thing to do is just to eliminate that hazard or risk completely. Great. We can sing so much about risk assessment, but we are almost there. Let me just finish this risk assessment strategies, because that's the one that I should end on. So risk assessment, risk management strategies. So understanding how risk matrix rating works. So how can you rate the risks after conducting it? So I have a graph here going to the north, or I say in vertical, is the likelihood. Then in the x-axis, it is the significance here. So I have about 4 colors. I have 5, so to say. I have black, I have green, yellow, this is brown, then I have pink here. So how do we rate risks there? If it is certain, likelihood, possible, uncertain, or rare, then we are going to code it like this. Remember, we are coding it in the x, y factors. That's the, we are going to get back to mathematics. That's the model that we are using. So the first one here, which is certain. When it is certain to happen, then it is insignificant. It can't happen just like it is not so that important, but it is certain to happen. Let's say there are cables there, naked cables, but there is no water in that place. Yeah, it is certain that it can cause shock, but it is insignificant because it can be seen. It is the place where it can be seen. So we are going to rate it low. Once it is low, we are going to shade it in green here. Then it is minor. It is going to change. We are going to call it in certain, it is moderate. Then if it is significant, then it is very high. We need to act. Here we need to act now. It is high. Then if it is major or catastrophic, oh, sorry now, there it is extremely high. So basically this is how we rate the risk assessment strategy. This is the strategy that we use when we are assessing any risk. There is a possible there. Yeah, it can happen. it is catastrophic, it is going to be pink. So keep this graph. It can help you in the future when you start identifying the risks there. I have the risk management model here. Now I can shed more light on here because we have the impact and we have the likelihood, and they have low, medium and high in both sides, the X as well as in the Y axis. So this risk assessment matrix, it is like this. It is explaining what we had here on top, where we have these colors, which is the strategy. Remember, we said that in green it is low, then in yellow it is moderate, then in brown it is high, then pink it is extremely high. So what measures can we put in each and every this color? Great. So this is what now I want to tell you about. This is the matrix that I want to tell you. So I'm starting with the yellow color. We have identified a risk and it is in yellow. We are saying in this case, we are saying that the likelihood, yes, it is low. The likelihood is low to rate. Then the impact, it is very high. The impact is very high because it is in yellow here. So what can we do? Close monitoring required. We need to closely watch the hazard identified. We need to pay particular attention to it. But what if the likelihood is medium again, but it is high? The impact is very high. It requires monitoring and management at this point. We need to start acting on it. Then if it is in pink, then it is intensive management. So yellow, we need to pay particular attention to it when it is high, but the likelihood is very low. If the impact is high and the likelihood is medium, we need to monitor and start managing it. But if the risk is high and the impact is high and the likelihood is very high, it needs intensive management. In the case where we rate that, okay, the likelihood is low and the impact is medium, we are saying that risk may be accepted. Yes, the risk has happened and it can be accepted to that level. We'll let people continue working on it. It is acceptable, yes, but tell them what they should do to keep themselves safe. Then if the impact is medium and the likelihood is also medium, then it is falling in yellow color. Management is very much recommended there. We need to start acting. Again, if the impact is medium and the likelihood is also high, management is required. We should continue just like that. So if everything is low, the impact is low. Oh, sorry, it starts raining here. If the impact is low and the likelihood is low, we need to make sure that people continue working because it is going to be low again. Great. Yeah, so this is basically the matrix that you can use to do the risk assessment manage. So this is the fourth step that I explained also, where you evaluate the risk severity and establish the precautions. Then you have to review it. This one I explained. You review your assessment and reassess if necessary. So what documentations do you need now? It is a misconception that risk assessments inherently involve a vast amount